Let's talk about the difference between femboys, cross-dressers, drag queens, and trans people. And there's two categories of trans. There's people who look like they're trans, and then there are people who consider themselves trans, but they've not ever done the thing to make themselves look like the other sex. They haven't either done HRT or they haven't done any of those procedures. So I'm not saying that you're any less trans because you don't look like the sex you identify as, but it's very disorienting. As a matter of fact, I need to start with this phenomenon as it is. It's very disorienting when a guy says, "I'm a girl," and it's like, no, you're clearly a guy. You have a beard and your voice is deeper than mine. Yeah, but I identify as a girl. Oh, see, why didn't you just say that? It's like, well, that's what I said. No. You said you're a girl. And when you tell me you're a girl, the first thing I think is not, that's a girl. The first thing I think is, that sounds like a guy. You don't look or sound like a girl. You're not going to convince me that you're a girl. It goes against everything you know, which is, yeah, that's just common sense. If someone with a deep voice and a beard comes to you and says, "I'm a girl," it's like, no, you aren't. Maybe you're misunderstanding what the word girl means, but no, you're not a girl. You're a guy who identifies as a girl. It's like, yeah, that's the same thing. No, it's not. Just because black and white are two different colors. Black can't be white and white can't be black. Those are two different colors. White reflects snow. Black absorbs heat. And I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about just the actual color. So, like, the way I describe the men aren't women conversation is apples aren't oranges. Orange juice is one thing and apple juice is another thing. Both of them taste good. You can make apple pie, but you can't make orange pie. If you're gonna make orange anything, it'll be like a citrusy tasting. I know there's a dessert that has to do with orange. We're just gonna call it orange puree or whatever like that. Where it's just, puree is like putting it in a blender. Okay, yeah, apples aren't oranges, so apple juice tastes different than orange juice, and boys aren't girls, girls aren't boys. I'm not saying that if you want to be identified as the other, you can't. I'm saying that they're same and that they should be the same is like, then you're either completely not acknowledging the importance of the difference, or you want the difference to not be there. We're just like, okay, boys and girls are different, and that's not to say anything bad about being a boy or a girl. If you want to identify as a girl, you can. It's not a matter of what you want to identify as. It's a matter of how people identify that. It's like, okay, so when a person who looks like a male identifies as a woman, it's confusing for a few reasons. Because it's like, do you want me to think of you as a woman and call you a woman or treat you like a woman? Or are you saying that I should think that what you look like currently should be considered as a woman? Because it's just like, no, everyone else who looks like you identifies as a man. You personally identify as a woman, which, okay, that's your prerogative. You can do that, but I'm not going to start identifying everyone with a beard as a woman now because you consider yourself one. It's like, okay, so what I want you to understand is that you're not changing the definition for everyone. You're changing the definition for yourself and trying to make everyone also change that definition for you. And I'm like, that's a little bit forceful, don't you think? It's like, no, it's not. You should call me by my pronouns. It's like, okay, can I slow down? Like, can I point something out to you? You don't want someone saying you have to accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your savior, right? It's like, yeah, I don't want someone forcing their religion on me. It's like, okay, so why are you forcing your gender identity on other people? It's like, no, I'm not doing that. If you're making other people acknowledge your pronouns, yes, you are. I hate to be that guy. I hate to be the one who sounds like I'm spreading hate. I'm like, first off, I have no hate in my heart for trans people. I want trans people to be exactly who they are. But when you start saying to other people, hey, you have to acknowledge my pronouns, and if you don't acknowledge my pronouns, you're rude, it's like, that's just like telling someone that they have to believe in God. Like, you're saying you have to believe what I believe is true, and if you don't, you're somehow a bigot. And I'm like, okay, so now we're getting into imposing your views on other people, because now you as a guy identify as a girl, and now you want to impose that view on everyone else and make it inconvenient for everyone else. And whenever that becomes the case, you're the ones being the problem at that point, because you can identify as a girl all day long, but not everyone's going to identify you as one. So again, that's not me saying that you can't identify as a girl. I'm just saying you're going to have a much harder time trying to convince everyone else you're a girl than if you just accept that reality yourself. Like, if you are identifying as a woman or you are identifying as a man, be happy with that truth. And if everyone doesn't accept that, that's fine. But I've met so many people who are like, people have to identify me by my pronouns. Like, hey, the world, okay, can you make everyone give you money? Well, of course not. Everyone has their own interest and they have their own bills to pay. All right, can you make everyone change their mind on a subject? Well, everyone has their own personal experiences, how they see the world. Can you make blue everyone's favorite color? Well, no. Some people like red more than blue or green more than blue, but I can't make everyone's favorite color blue. Okay, so why are you trying to change everyone's mind on this subject? What subject? Telling everyone that you're a girl or a guy. Well, because it's important to me. Okay, I understand the importance of it to you and why you think it's important, but what you also fail to understand is that you're trying to change the definition for everyone, and that just changes their perception of reality. If they all of a sudden do decide, let's say it's mandated that you have to call trans people by their pronouns, right? It becomes mandated. Now for people who are, let's say, learning what a boy and a girl is, it actually becomes confusing for them to understand the difference between a boy and a girl because they don't have a defined definition anymore. And again, I understand for trans people that's a convenient truth and a convenient way to live, but it becomes inconvenient for people who are trying to literally understand the difference between what is called a boy and what's called a girl. And while that, again, might seem like it's a benefit, it's like, no, it's like, if you can't differentiate something, and if you can't understand what makes that thing different or what the details are, then you can't identify that thing. Like, this is what I'm trying to help you understand. If you start saying boys and girls are the same thing, and you might as well not even call someone a boy or a girl, you actually take away the definition of boy and girl. And when you do that, it diminishes both of those words. They mean nothing. The word man and the word woman means nothing because they're pretty much interchangeable. And when you start saying that a woman and a man are the same thing, then you start to make it where that definition loses its defining qualities. Black isn't white, green isn't gray. Things have things that differentiate them. If things meant the same thing, I'm using the word thing too many times, there wouldn't be any differentiation between them. Green isn't red. They're two different colors. Trees are green, apples are red, but they can also be green. White is not black. White reflects snow, black absorbs heat. Heck, one of the reasons that people's pigments are the shade that they are is because African people grew up in the sun, so their pigment is darker because they were absorbing more sun. So their skin adapted and became darker to absorb more sun. Usually people who are more pale tend to come from colder areas because they didn't get as much sun, so their skin became a lighter pigment. That is an evolutionary fact. Like I said, if you look in Africa, that's why so many people are brown there. Again, if you look in the hot countries, everyone's brown because their skin adapted to the conditions. But when you take words and then try to make the definition meaningless, then you take the importance of saying that word at all. Boy and girl are two different things, and they should be identified as different. If you personally identify as a boy or a girl, then that is your personal decision, and you have every right to do that. And right, but also trying to change the definition for everyone else is actually more forceful than helpful. And again, doing so is imposing your view on other people. You're saying you have to identify me by the pronouns I identify by. It's like, okay, but if you have a mustache and a beard, I'm not going to call you a woman. Well, why not? Because you are clearly a man, and I can see that you look like a man, and you're calling yourself a woman. So, well, I identify as a woman. It's like, okay, that is your gender identity, and that's how you identify. So let's talk about the relationship between your identity. As a matter of fact, let's talk about identity as a whole. Identity is made up of three parts: how you identify yourself, how your friends and your family identify you, and how society identifies you. Now, how you identify yourself is the most important one because you live with yourself every day. So that's the one that matters the most. You need to take care of that, and you need to protect yourself and your own emotions. So how you feel is important. That being said, you have friends and family who know you. They've been around you. They have either known you your whole life or just for the time that they've met you. Those are the people who have the most relationship with you. So those are the people, if you want to be called trans, that you should be talking to. You're like, hey, I want to be called a woman now. I want to be called a man now. Those are the people that you should be having those conversations with, not random strangers. All right? The reason I say you shouldn't be having that conversation with random strangers is because you saying you need to believe in Jesus, and if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. It's like, hold up. I just met you, and you're already telling me things about my life that you don't even know who I am or what I believe. I could be a Christian, but you're just coming up to me and saying you need to go believe in Jesus. Like, all right, you're imposing your religion on me. Well, it's the same thing when you come up to someone and say, I'm a girl, you have to acknowledge this. Like, no, it's not the same thing. It is the same thing. If you're telling somebody that you look like a girl and they can see that you clearly look like a man, they're going to be like, I'm sorry, you're telling me two different things. You're saying I'm a woman and you look like a man. So let's talk about the term that was happening. It's called cognitive dissonance. When you say one thing that doesn't match what you're saying. Is when you say something and what is being said does not match the reality or doesn't match what is apparently in front of them. It's called cognitive dissonance. It means you're saying something that does not match what's being said. It's like saying, oh, the world's a beautiful place right now and everything's on fire. If everything's on fire, it's not a beautiful place. It looks like tumultuous. It looks terrifying. It looks scary. It looks in a like a sense of chaos. Everything looks chaotic. When you say things that don't match with what people see, it makes them uncomfortable and it makes them uneasy. So when a man identifies as a woman and then calls himself a woman, he's like, okay, you're gonna make people uncomfortable because people are seeing a man in front of them and calling themselves a woman. And again, your gender identity is your gender identity. I'm not saying it's not real. What I am saying is that you can't get past the level of cognitive dissonance when you're saying I'm a woman when you look like a man. So that's the first thing. You can't just expect people to completely disconnect from that part of their brain. They can't just let that go, or they can't just change that, or they can't just overlook that. That is literally part of their understanding of what a man and a woman is. Just like understanding what the color green or the color red or the color blue is. They associate this with a very certain bit of knowledge, and if what you're saying doesn't match that knowledge, they can't get past that because they know what they know is true. They know what the color black looks like. They know what the color white looks like. You can't all of a sudden call green yellow or yellow green when those things are two different distinct things. Now there is a yellowish green and a greenish yellow, but that's a in-between color. That is something that is both yellow and green and shares both of those facts. But again, black is not white and white is not black. Now again, black and white together is gray. Again, you have things that's half white, it's half black, so it's gray. And gray is a good term to describe the mix of two concepts that are very distinct. So when you have two things that are distinctly different from each other, you can identify one over the other. Red looks like this, green looks like this. But when they are mixed, then it's harder to understand, okay, which one is this? And again, gray is that line between black and white, where again, white is one color and black is another color, and those things are very distinct. Gray is a mix of both of those things, and it's not as distinct. You can't tell whether it is black or white, whether it's more black or white. It is both of them. So the reason people say there's lines of gray or shades of gray, it means that it's hard to tell the difference between these two things because there's not a clear distinction. That's not the same thing with gender. Again, you can have people who are born ambiguous, like they have masculine hormones along with being feminine, which again, at that point, they have the right to choose which one they're going to be and which one they best suits them. But even in those scenarios, that's a choice that they have to make because of the way their body is built and the situation that they're born into. When you have someone who's clearly male and then they identify as a woman later, again, that's your choice. You have every right to identify that way. But again, your identity is made of three different things: how you see you, how your friends and family see you, and how society sees you. Now, you can call yourself a woman and you're going to identify that way. Your friends and family are probably going to identify you that way as well. But society probably won't identify you that way because, again, people know what a man is and people know what a woman is, and they know what a man is based on appearance. And they also know what a woman is based on appearance. Now, if you look like a woman and you identify as a woman, then you're probably going to get a lot more grace than if you call yourself a woman and you look like a man. But again, me pointing that out makes people upset. It's like, oh, well, you're just being hateful. Let me say this in the most objective way possible. If you look like a man and you identify yourself as a woman, the cognitive dissonance is going to be far too great for them to overlook that, and they're not going to agree with you. That is the simplest way of putting that. I'm not being racist, hateful, biased, or spiteful. I'm being very clear and direct. Okay? So if you can't square yourself away with that reality, then that means you have another problem, which means you live in fantasy. If you think that saying that you're a woman is going to make you a woman all of a sudden, you're living a fantasy. I hate to say it that way. You're living a fantasy. And the reason that that's a fantasy is because oranges aren't apples and apples aren't oranges. Just because you change the definition of something doesn't mean that definition has changed now. It just means it's changed for you. So I'm going to say this again. Your identity is composed of three things: you, what your family thinks, and what society thinks. Stop worrying about what society thinks because they don't know who you are in the first place. So stop worrying about someone who doesn't know you identifying you by your pronouns because they don't personally know you anyways. So stop. That's what I'm going to say about that. Stop trying to make everyone else identify you by your pronoun because they don't know you. They don't know you from Jack from Jill. They don't know anything about you, what you like, what your hobbies are, who you are, what your name is. They don't know anything about you. So stop trying to waste your time on people who don't know you. Waste your time with people who know you personally and your family members. And yes, some of them are not going to call you your personal gender identity, but at least start with them first as opposed to strangers, because you're always gonna run into more problems trying to convince strangers that you're the other sex than your family members and your friends, because those people are actually close to you. So worry about who's actually close to you first before you worry about strangers, because you're always gonna be arguing with people if you're trying to convince someone that you don't even know, who barely knows you, that you're a guy or you're a girl, because you're always going to find more issue trying to convince those people who have no attachment to you. They don't care if they hurt your feelings. As a matter of fact, they don't care about you in general. They don't know who you are. And so you trying to tell them that you are something that they don't see or they don't agree with, you're going to have a much harder time trying to convince those individuals. So it is a waste of time to convince strangers of your gender identity. Deal with your family first and your friends first, and get that respect from them first, as opposed to people that you have no connection to. Because I promise you, you will be a lot more miserable trying to convince strangers than accepting your gender identity amongst your family and your friends, the people who actually respect you, not people who don't know who you are. Anyway, that's it. I don't like to talk about the transgender issue because I feel like people think I'm coming from a place of hate. And I'm like, I want you to understand this entirely and completely. You can be transgender and you can identify as whatever gender you want to, but you're going to have a much harder time trying to convince strangers to accept your gender identity than if you start with your family and your friends. Start there and then worry about strangers later. Your family and your friends will defend you and speak up on your behalf. But if you spend all your time trying to convince strangers that this is who you are, you're going to be a lot more miserable. That's all I'm saying.